This guide will show you how to correctly set up spawns for a map in Splitgate 2. Having a thoughtful spawn system is a must for maps to flow smoothly and to assist players. Setting up spawns for a map in Splitgate 2 is simple, as long as some important factors are recognized and accounted for. Note that the information of this guide is mostly based on observations and testing done with the spawn system of Splitgate 2, with as much information confirmed from the developers as possible. Splitgate 2 uses a single object for all spawning needs. To find the object, go to Catalog, Gameplay, Objects, Player Start. This is the object we will be using to set up all the spawns. The details section of the object features 7 properties related to spawning that we need to know and understand. Team ID determines the team that will primarily spawn on the point. The valid teams range from 0 to 29 and 255 for the neutral team. The most common teams to use are 0, 1, and 255. Not for players and not for bots are quite self-explanatory, as they prevent players or bots from spawning on the point. The use cases for these are rare, such as not wanting bots to spawn in an area where they have trouble navigating away from. Priority determines the priority for this point to be used as a respawn. Initial priority does the same for initial spawns. Note that a lower value means a higher priority, so 0 will be prioritized over 1. Spawn type determines which types of spawns the spawn point is used for. The options we have are respawn, initial only, and initial and respawn, meaning that the point will be used as an initial spawn and a respawn. Static determines if the spawn can only ever be used by the assigned team. This should be left off for a core gameplay setup, as some modes automatically force this property on to prevent teams from spawn flipping. Currently the modes that force the property on are Firecracker, Splitball, and 4v4 Hot Zone. Here I have built a test map that showcases some general spawn placement and spawn priority guidelines. To start with the spawn placement, we have split this area into 3 sections. One section has spawn points that are assigned only to the alpha team. One section has spawn points with them only assigned to the Bravo team. And then the middle section of the map has the spawn points assigned to the neutral team, meaning that both teams can spawn on these. The reasoning for this type of section spawn setup with 2 sides assigned to teams and the central one with the neutral spawns is to have some kind of safe spawns in the neutral area of the map if one team is being pushed out of their base. If you're spawning in the middle of the map and the enemy is in your base, in most cases you will have an advantage over the enemy because you can gain access to like the middle of the map quicker. Maybe there's some objectives and then you can start bringing them to your base. But if there were no neutral spawns in middle, you would be like stuck behind your base or spawning at your base at some predictable spawns. So this just alleviates that and brings some more flow to the spawning. For setting up the spawn priority on the spawn points, you want to really keep it simple. So for most of my spawns, I have a priority of 0. So these forward spawns in base, these neutral spawns, and these initial spawn points which are used as a respawn as well, they have a priority of 0. The only place where I have a different priority is these back spawns with a priority of 1, because they are in a little bit of a safer area. But since they have a priority of 1, they will only be used if all of these other priority 0 spawns are deemed too dangerous. So for example, if there are players positioned near them and completely pressuring your team to spawn back here, then you will spawn back here. But if this would have a priority of 0, then these would always be used because they are the safest spawns away, and since all of the other ones are priority 0 as well, being equal, then these would always just be deemed the safest ones. So that's the reasoning for having a priority 1 on these faraway spawns. Now for the initial spawns, I have initial priority 0 on these ones that are a bit spaced apart, and initial priority 1 on the ones in the middle here. This is not super important, it's just a way to space players out. So if you would start the map in a 2v2 scenario, players on this map would spawn in these spawns and in these ones. And then if more players join, then the higher initial priority spawns will be used and the players will be filled to these. So here's an example setup of a spawn system following these guidelines on a map called Simulation Echo by Core that we have set up. We can start by looking at the respawn points. We have the majority of respawn points set to priority 0, with them being split in 3 different parts of the map, the middle having neutrals and the sides having the team-based ones. And the only priority 1 respawn point we have is here, and also the initial spawns, some of them are doubling as priority 1 respawn points. We have intentionally not placed any priority 0 respawn points on the very outer edges of the map, as this would be too safe for most spawn cases. Instead, our priority 0 respawn points are located a bit more closer to the center of the map. This allows for there to be more unique spawn locations, which are also less predictable than if they were always happening on the very outer edges of the map. Our priority 0 neutral spawn points are located in the middle third section of the map. These are not placed in power positions, and they will only be used if the spawns near the bases are deemed too dangerous to spawn at. When placing respawn points, aim for positioning them mainly around the edges of the map, facing towards the action, near portals if possible, in vision of further away portals, oriented away from nearby walls and death pits, and with an option to backtrack into safety. These ensure the spawning experience flows smoothly and the players can quickly get back into the fight. Our 4 initial spawns with initial priority 0 are spread apart in order to not make the players funnel into one path at the start of the game. If the match is loaded with more than 4 players per team, these 2 initial spawns will be used up first after the initial 0s, since these have initial priority 1. And if it's loaded with even more than 6, then these ones here will be used as they have initial priority 2. The positioning of initial spawn points is usually done at the edge of the map on the corresponding team's side. The initial spawns don't have to be in a single group and are instead often scattered in a line along the edge of the team's base, so that everyone has a slightly different positional advantage. Here's some top-down gameplay of split ball on various arena maps, showcasing the flow of spawning based on spawn priority, player proximity, and line of sight to the spawns. Currently we can't be sure what kind of spawn priority is set on the spawn points in the dev maps, but most likely they're following the general guidelines explained earlier. We can see that where players spawn is highly based on player positioning, where players are spawning as far away from danger as possible. This often results in the neutral spawns around the middle third section of the map being used. You can tell which spawns are neutral by noticing how players from both teams are able to spawn on them at various points in the match. As the mode is split ball, the static property of the spawn points is forced on, which makes the spawn points with a non-neutral team assigned to them only allow players of that team to spawn on them. The following gameplay is from Team Deathmatch, where all respawns can be used by all teams. You'll notice the neutral spawns in the middle third section of the map aren't being used nearly as often. This is due to the spawns around the edges of the map being usually safer to spawn at, now that anyone can spawn on them regardless of their team. When setting up the spawn system of your map, It's suggested to start simple by having all spawns be priority 0 and only adjusting the priority values of certain spawns after playtesting. If you find players spawning on some spawn points more often than ideal, you may want to increase their priority value by 1 to reduce their frequency. Keep in mind that even increasing the priority value by 1 will have a major impact in how often that spawn is used, so it's recommended to make small changes and to playtest often until you have a great spawn system.